Today we're going to be talking about the do's and don'ts of fishing on the sport fishing boats here in Southern California. So you may know that we have the world's largest sport fishing boat fleet, and if you're new to fishing altogether or just simply new to fishing in the area and you've never taken advantage of these sport fishing boats, or you've gone on a couple times but think that you could do a little bit better, this is a great way to get acquainted with the etiquette when you're on these boats. I did vet this out with a deckhand who's well experienced. I am just a passenger. I've been doing this for quite some time, but I've never worked in the industry or anything like that. These are just simply based on my observations and then vetting them out with the people that do this day in and day out. So let's get started. So we're going to start with the do's. Absolutely rent gear if you don't have your own gear or haven't done it before. And the reason why is if you haven't done it before and you go out and you buy a setup, it may not be the right setup for that trip. If you're watching them fishing the Coronado Islands the week before, that's going to be very different than what you're going to be using when they're going offshore for bluefin tuna or something along those lines. So, be prepared to rent a setup if you don't have your own gear. But if you do have your own gear, absolutely bring it. As long as the line on it and everything else matches up with what they're targeting, there's no reason you shouldn't bring your own gear. Especially if you're doing inshore species like bass and things like that, you can get away with having 10-pound test. And there's nothing more fulfilling than catching a great fish on your own setup. So bring your own gear if it's going to match what it is that they're catching. But absolutely rent stuff if as opposed to buying if you've never done it before. The rental setups will also be dialed in perfectly for whatever it is that you're doing. So the drag setting will be right, and they'll give you the right hooks and all of that good stuff. All right, number 2 is bring your own snacks. They do have snacks aboard the boat, generally speaking. Every single one that I've been on, they have a full service galley. They'll have burgers and chips and candy bars and things like that. So they'll have lunch that you can buy there and all that stuff. But if you want to eat on the healthier side, it's generally good thinking to bring your own snacks and even bring your own water. They frown upon bringing your own beer and stuff like that, but they do sell beer on most of these boats as well. But never hesitate to bring your own snacks. That's your prerogative and absolutely is welcomed. All right, number 3. Absolutely ask the deckhands to check your drag settings and or check your knots. If you're not 110% sure that they're dialed in perfectly, the deckhands are there for a reason. They want to make sure that you're going to have the best trip possible and you're going to be pulling over as much fish as possible. And that ain't going to happen if your knots aren't dialed in perfectly and your drag isn't set. Not all of us know how to do that stuff properly or have the experience to at least be able to tie our own knots and stuff like that. So let them do what they do best. Have them check that stuff or tie it and set it on their own. Okay. Number 4, speaking about the crew, oftentimes people don't realize that, that their money comes from tips, and these guys work so hard, oftentimes putting their health and lives at risk to make sure that we're having a good time. It's, not inconceivable to see a deckhand leaning over the side of a rail in a really big swell while doing some crazy origami macrame, getting 5 guys out that are hooked up on tuna out of a big, huge tangle, and all of them getting those fish over. What these guys do is absolutely amazing. They're freaking heroes out there. It's insane. And we're not even talking about, when they're out there and saving lives, in times of emergency and things like that. I've witnessed that one too. These guys are very well trained, very well seasoned, and put themselves in very dangerous positions, all so that we can have a fantastic time. So tip them as if you had a great restaurant experience or better. 20% is absolutely a standard tip, I would say, for the amount of effort that these guys put into making sure that you have a fantastic trip. So absolutely tip and tip generously. That's hugely important. You're never going to see these guys pull up in a Maserati or anything like that. None of them are living in Rancho Santa Fe, not even the captains. I mean, this isn't a big money-making thing. They do it out of the love of the activity, out of the love of their careers. So make sure to tip accordingly. Number 5, when you show up, be calm, be patient, be ready to have a good time. I mean, realistically, sometimes it can get really high pressure, high stress, at a full speed bite and things are going on, everything's kind of chaotic. Put yourself in Zen mode, be calm, be patient, listen to instructions, As long as you're doing that, understanding it's a team effort, you're going to have a good time, and it actually contributes to the overall success of the trip. So come in there with a positive attitude and be calm and absolutely be patient. Number 6. And this is another kind of part that goes with this previous one, and it's communicate. So we're talking about being calm. We're talking about being patient. When you hook into that fish, start communicating. Communicate before then. If you're coming down the rails, sometimes that fish is going to do a 180 and bring you back up the other way. So over, under, coming down the rail. I need help. I'm in a tangle, whatever it is. You see someone hooked up right as that captain's about ready to pull out. Yell hook up, yell biter, yell fresh one, whatever it is. Make sure you're communicating. It can get pretty loud out there. He's got a loudspeaker up in the wheelhouse. Down there, the deckhands are kind of doing a variety of different things. So as long as everybody's aware, hey, one person's hooked up. Hey, I just hooked up. Hey, I'm coming down the rail, whatever it is. Be used to communicating as if you were on a football team, because that's really kind of what it is. We're a team. They're the coaches. Okay. Let's see. Number 7, absolutely call the landing a day or two ahead of time and find out what their tackle recommendations are. Especially if you have your own gear, you have your own jigs, you have your own, everything. Call up and find out. Hey, I'm on this trip, aboard this boat on this day. What do you guys recommend? And they could be like, well, captain just switched it from Coronado Islands to offshore, for instance, or they're not seeing any big fish, so just being a 50-pound setup and a 30-pound setup, whatever it is. Don't make any assumptions when you're setting yourself up for this trip. Absolutely call up ahead of time. It's going to make your trip better and make everybody's trip better when everybody's got like the right gear. And the only way to do that is to check ahead of time. So that's absolutely something you should be doing. Number 8, monitor the fish counts. Fish counts are a great tool to find out what is kind of biting. Are the yellowfin showing up? Are the dorado out there? Are we going to be targeting bluefin? All of these are good things to learn, and we're lucky enough to have these landings posting their fish counts just to give us a general idea of what's happening. So it's something that if you navigate to the website of each of the landings, you can be able to find a link for fish counts. Absolutely take a look at them from time to time. Let's see. And number 9, ask for help for anything and everything. If you get hung up on a piece of kelp or down on the bottom, if you're tangled up with someone, if you want to learn a new knot, if you have a question about why we're doing something, if you want to learn a different way of hooking a bait, whatever it is, ask for that help. That's what they're here for. And it's better that you ask for help and them help you than not ask for help and kind of get things fouled up a little bit. Sometimes it could just end up being that you end up tangling with someone else. And if you guys aren't getting help and trying to get it out yourselves, all of a sudden someone with a fish can come down the rail and then get right into that tangle. So always be ready to ask for help with anything. That's what they're there for. They prefer you do it that way as opposed to not asking. And, again, you tip them generously. They're there to help you. That's what a deckhand does. Now let's move on to the don'ts. And, again, this is all meant to be positive and contribute to a fun and exciting and rewarding trip, right? So you're going to have some do's for sure, but absolutely these don'ts are pretty critical. Number 1, talking about the fish counts. Don't follow fish counts just to go out when it's limit style fishing. Don't be an El Nino fisherman. Don't go only when you think you're going to get the most fish possible. And there's a couple reasons why. Number 1, if you wait until the fishing is red hot, chances are you're not going to get on a desirable boat or get on a boat at all. Okay. Some of us have our preferences of sport fishing boats that we like to take and stuff like that. But if you wait until they're getting 125 yellowtail a day, you may not be able to book that trip. And I can promise you that if you wait that long to book the trip, chances are you may end up showing up the day after or a couple days after that bite completely dies off. So, you never know until you go. Monitoring the fish counts is good for kind of getting an idea of what's starting to hit and all that stuff. But if you want to go fishing, just go fishing. Don't chase the counts to make sure you're going to get the most fish as possible. It's about the experience of being out on the water and being with friends and being with other people and working together as a team. Not necessarily limiting out every single time you go out. It's not a reasonable thing to do, and it's not going to benefit you in the long run. All right, next one. Don't show up with a customer's always right type attitude. That type of attitude may work in a restaurant, it may work in a retail setting, but this is a little bit different. Oftentimes when it's a full speed tuna bite and things like that, they're going to be communicating very loudly, and they might be yelling directives at people because there's multiple things that need to happen at one time in order to make sure this guy over here gets his fish, you get out of your tangle, and this guy is able to hook a fish, right? So if you're up there with the attitude like, they should be catering to you specifically the whole entire time, it kind of goes against that team mentality that we're supposed to have out there. So go out there, and we talked about being calm, being patient, and all that stuff, but be ready to work as a team. This isn't something where we want to complain because someone's talking loudly at me or whatever, because that stuff happens in high intensity situations. And I've seen it with, a hot yellowtail bite, and everybody's having to bounce fish over, and you're going to get hit in the head with a bait every once in a while. People are going to be bumping into each other, and that's just the name of the game. It's a fun activity when everybody's working together as a team. But with that customer's always right mentality, it can kind of just derail it a little bit. And if that's your attitude, you're not going to end up having a lot of fun. Bottom line. All right. Then number 3. Don't fish the wrong side of the boat. So this is a big one, especially on the full day trips and longer when they're out there offshore and setting up a drift on a kelp patty or a school of fish or something along those lines. They're going to be telling you to fish off of the port side or the starboard side. And if they're telling everybody to fish off the port side and you get a little overwhelmed, for instance, and you need to take a break, so you just want to go drop a line off the other side, all that's going to do is go under the boat and tangle up the people on the correct side of the boat. So it actually makes it worse, believe it or not. So never drop in on the side they tell you not to drop in on, because it's about the way the current is going and the way that captain's setting up. And then also, don't pick a crappy bait. If that bait is kind of like dying, just sitting there in the corner, not really moving, or it's got, scales coming off of it and blood all over the place, just because it's easier to grab doesn't mean it's the right bait to get. Trust me, a lively bait is needed for a variety of reasons. Number one, no fish is going to bite a dying fish that's just doing circles in front of you, but that fish doing circles in front of you might also tangle up a whole bunch of people, when they have a lively bait that's running straight out. They're always going to say, watch your lines. If you have an angle, you're going to get entangled, all of this. And a half-dead bait is going to really kind of screw things up. So make sure that you're dropping it on the correct side and you're picking lively baits. Those are like absolutely critical things. Don't do otherwise. Number 4. Don't drop your bait in until the captain or the crew tell you to. It kind of sounds silly, and if you're following the rules, following instructions, you're not gonna have a problem with this, but sometimes we get a little overly excited. Sometimes that captain gets on there. You guys, there's a kelp patty the size of a football field coming up on the port side. Get ready, and he's telling the deckhand to start tossing baits out, to start a chum line or something along those lines, or he's metering a fat school of fish. Everybody's getting excited, especially if you've been waiting 2 hours because you guys have been cruising around trying to find a school and you finally find it. Never ever fails. There's at least a couple guys that go up there and they hook their bait, and right as he pulls up on the kelp, they're tossing their baits in. But what happens oftentimes is when he pulls up on a kelp or a school, he's still gonna slide by it and maybe even cruise around to get set on it. He's setting on it because what he's doing is he's looking at the current and a variety of other factors and setting the boat in such a way that we're going to be able to stick with it for as long as possible. So if you toss your bait in before he's stopped and dialed in, before he says drop in, chances are your bait's going to go one way as the boat goes another way. And then once he tells people to drop in, you're going to be up on the bow, your bait's going to be down here, and you're not going to be successful, and everyone else might even tangle up with you. So never drop in until they tell you to drop in. There's so many reasons why, but that's a really good one. Let's see. And number 5, and this goes along with what we were talking about earlier. Don't take the crew's directives and instructions and loud talking as a personal attack or anything like that. Again, we're all here to have a good time, but we're here to work as a team. And if you're, getting upset because of the way that people are talking, because, again, full speed bite, your line's getting tangled up or whatever, just go with the flow. It all ends up working out. Nobody dislikes anybody. No one wants to hurt anybody's feelings, but sometimes things need to be communicated loudly. I mean, we're all adults for the most part. And in high intensity situations, like I mentioned before, they're just going to be shouting things sometimes. You just got to roll with it. Not a big deal. Man up a little bit. Let's see. don't get hammered. Pretty simple. We're all adults on there that are purchasing alcohol. We should be responsible, but being inebriated has kind of domino effects. And at the very least, and especially on the full day trips and longer, when a lot of fish are biting, a lot of people are hooked up, and you've got circle hooks and you're trying to hook a sardine or an anchovy or something like that, and forgetting how to do this, or being a little sloppy over here or whatever, or just getting shitty and falling down the stairs when everybody's trying to sleep or whatever. Like it just doesn't really work. Just be responsible. Have a couple beers. A lot of people see fishing and drinking as synonymous, and that's okay. But just be responsible. Getting hammered on these boats isn't, the right thing to do, because you're out there to have that experience. Not forget the experience, basically. And it can just get really dangerous. Especially at nighttime and in a big swell. And let's see, this last one was after when I vetted this whole list off of a deckhand that I know. He also mentioned this. Hey, you got a good list going, but one of my pet peeves is, Eric, when people try to grab a bait out of the net as I'm scooping it into the troughs. So, these guys that get up on the bait tanks and they're scooping bait out and they're sticking it on the little troughs, and they're keeping in mind, just like a bartender does, which ones need bait first and which ones have lively baits and who's been waiting there the longest and all of this stuff. Or they're taking and they're throwing it out and they're creating a chum line. And if you're trying to stick your hand in that net while they're doing that, it's kind of screwing things up. It's just a pet peeve. Not a huge deal, but hey, again, we're following rules, following instructions, keep your hand out of the net. But most importantly, again, these are just guidelines. There's all kinds of other things to keep, in mind when you're doing this. But this isn't, sitting at the river with a bobber, catching catfish. This isn't, I guess you could say that typical fishing with your grandpa experience. It can be exhilarating. It can be create lifetime memories. Catch a fish of a lifetime. That's a pretty incredible thing. 1 a.m. on a big old jig, or even catching just a big old calico bass, or catching a fish for the first time. These are fantastic experiences. And part of the reason why I wanted to make this video is it took me a while to kind of grasp all of these concepts. I didn't have anybody teaching me. I would show up on the boats, and my first trip was absolutely miserable because I wasn't picking good baits. I wasn't dropping in on the right side of the boat. I wasn't really listening to the deckhands, and I really didn't want to do it again. And one person talked me into going back out. And, when I made those adjustments, it really all clicked. And that's when things got better and better and better. And I started improving as a fisherman. I am just a passenger. I'm not a crew. I've never worked for a fishing boat or anything like that. But these are things I've picked up over the years. And, if I had my way, someone would have told me all of this stuff ahead of time. I probably would have been catching more fish sooner. So, this is why I'm doing it. I want you all, if you're curious enough or want to get into the sport, get into this hobby, to be successful as soon as possible. So take it for what you will. Once again, all of your tackle needs should be taken care of at the tackle shop. But if you ever have questions, you can always go to the link on my bio. I generally have, gear on there that I use that you can get pretty easily if you don't have time to go to the tackle shops. And never hesitate to call me. Make sure to follow, like the video. Give me some comments. Did I miss anything? I'd be happy to address it. Make a version 2, whatever. This is supposed to be instructional for people who are not experts. Now, I'm not saying I'm an expert by any means, but I've been doing it long enough to at least pick up a few things along the way and hopefully be able to help you guys out too. Aside from that, once again, I hope you guys catch a fish of a lifetime. Get out there, book that trip. Don't follow the counts. Just make it happen. Go out there and have fun. You're not going to have fun sitting on the couch waiting for the right time. Just go out.